Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show today. It's How To Tuesday on the Tom Rowland Podcast, brought to you by Black Rifle Coffee. We are going to talk about something that I know a lot of you like to do, and that is wade fishing. I have the man, Chris Bush from Speckled Truth. He's going to talk to us about wade fishing, good practices for wade fishing. Chris, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, Tom. Hey, I'm well, man. First off, thanks again for having me on here just to talk a little bit about
Absolutely.
Really my passion, which is wade fishing for big speckled trout.
Yeah. What do most people have? What are they doing wrong when they're getting started, or what do you normally tell people? What are the questions that people have about wade fishing, or how can you help us to be better?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it really starts with gear and equipment, right? And so having the right gear and equipment in anything, I think, is important, right, for a successful endeavor. And so having the right gear. And so now we're in the throes of winter, and winter wading here in the state of Texas for big speckled trout is really, really our bread and butter. This is what we love to do. We can't wait for this time of year. And so having the right gear, the right waders, the right wading boots, the right, outer shell jackets, right? Gore-Tex. And so, not sponsored by them, admittedly, but Sims makes great quality products. And I know many other, brand manufacturers do as well, Grundens to Frog Togs, whatever, right? But I'm partial to Sims. I've had them for quite some time. I have the Sims. I have a little bit dated, the G3 waders, but I also have their Sims flat sneakers, as well as a Sims guide jacket. Just really those three things alone will help you kind of get through a winter wading season in some pretty favorable water temps, right? As long as it doesn't dip into the 40s, you can kind of get away with some of that. But staying in those, low 50s to even 60-degree water temps is really ideal. The Sims flat sneakers help you with wading long distances. They don't put a lot of burden on your feet. They don't, you have a little bit more endurance. And sometimes that is the name of the game. Winter wading is kind of waiting for that bite to develop throughout the course of the day, right? Staying in an area or staying, close to a pocket or on a flat and kind of letting that bait pull up and letting that bite develop, and having the right gear and having really just the things, the tools that you need can kind of help, you be successful on water.
Right. What about, looking for these fish where you're going to find them, and being able to use your, when you're wading, you're able to kind of feel the bottom, and what are you looking for when you're kind of in water that you can't necessarily see? It's not maybe the crystal clearest water. What are you looking for that tells you that fish are there?
And that's the great part about wade fishing, Tom, is the ability to kind of feel that connection with the environment, right? You're standing in the environment, you're surrounded by it, right? So really walking on flats, you can feel the bottom texture and the differences in bottom texture from shell to mud to maybe sand, a little grass, maybe a sand mud mix or a little sand shell mix. You can feel that crunch that, and it's really those subtleties sometimes that can kind of help you dictate whether, maybe pattern those fish and maybe what they're holding to. Maybe they're on kind of an edge where maybe some hard shell meets that kind of sand shell mix. And you can kind of feel that through the course of the day, kind of helping that bite develop. But you can also, too, standing in the water, right? You can also feel some water temperature changes just by kind of walking through the water. Even though it isn't cold, you can just feel that little difference in water temp on your waders and water height and levels, right? So maybe I'm in that kind of knee-deep water and I'm walking this flat, and all of a sudden I notice a slight depression where I was knee-deep. Maybe I'm slightly over knee or kind of more towards that thigh, and all of a sudden I got a hit. And so what you do is you kind of make a mental map in your brain of kind of, okay, this is, the bottom texture that these fish are holding to. This is about the depth that they're kind of holding to. And to some extent, the water temp in which they're holding to. And really those three things, if you pay attention enough to that, that's really the name of the game. That can help you be more consistent in kind of understanding a bite and how it's developing. And then just overall, being a better angler and targeting those fish.
Yeah. So what everybody wants to know is, when you're wading, how do you catch the dirty 30? That's what you're known for, the 30-inch trout. That's the thing. What's the secret? What are you looking for when you're, is there a trick to catching them when you're wading versus catching them in a boat? Would you rather wade for the big fish? I know I've seen pictures of you catching those kind of fish out of a boat and wading. But do you prefer one over the other, or is there anything you can tell us how we can catch one of those?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I prefer waiting, Tom. I really do. And the reason I say that is because I don't have to worry about any other external factors, right? In a boat, you have, a trolling motor, you have hull slap, you have speed, you have height really off the water. Wade fishing, as you kind of, progress through a flat and as you're looking for certain things, you can stop. Basically, my two legs, my power poles. I can stop on a dime. I don't have to worry about hull slap. There's a little bit more stealth to it, right? And so that's, those fish are conditioned. They've seen a lot. They're fairly old fish for their species, 8 to 10 years old, if you will. So they've seen a lot. Many probably have maybe even been caught before, right? And so the long story short there is that you kind of have to think and you have to do a lot of expectation management, where mentally you kind of have to prepare yourself as if I'm going to target a fish of this size and this caliber. I'm going to have to manage my expectations that this is not an everyday thing. I've caught 5 in my entire life, and I've been at this for a long time. And many other anglers that are out there have never caught one, right? And so these are truly unicorns to some extent, but the intent there is you got to manage expectations. You have to fish with confidence. You have to fish with confidence in your abilities to read the water. But really, to answer your question, approaching it, I far prefer to wade. In that wading provides you some stealth. It provides you that kind of speed. You can kind of dictate a lot of things that you can kind of take out of the equation if you were fishing out of a boat.
Yeah, nice. A lot of those tips, you could use those tips for wade fishing for whatever. Mostly we're talking about trout, and mostly we're talking about your area where you do a lot of fishing in Texas and
Yes,
in that coast. But people wade fish for all kinds of stuff. We wade fish for redfish and trout in the state of Florida, but we're also when you were talking about the temperature change, that's something that when we wade for bonefish, we're trying to catch usually the last part of the outgoing tide and the first part of the incoming tide. And a lot of times we'll do that in the summertime. And the easiest way to know that tide has changed is the temperature immediately. You're getting that hot water. The water's been heating up on the flat as the sun's coming down. The outgoing tide is going to be warmer water, and then the incoming tide is going to be cooler water coming from, usually on the Gulf of Mexico is where we are. We're fishing right there. And that temperature change is, you can feel that. You would never know it in a boat. You would never know. You could put your hand in the water, you wouldn't be able to tell. But you've been wading in that water for so long, and now there's a temperature change. And it's just like if you're in a hot room and somebody opens the door and there's nice cool air comes in. It's like, wow, there's no mistaking it. And that can also help to really nail that tide down. Like you can then look at your watch and go, okay, I am 100% sure that the tide is coming in right now, and the forecasted time for this, the closest tide station is this. And so this flat that I'm on is 15 minutes behind that other spot, right? That has been one of the ways that temperature change has helped me to kind of really nail that tide down to the most precise that I can get it. And I would never have known that if it wasn't for waiting. But in you guys in Texas, it seems like in Florida, we wade where the boat will not go anymore, right? Like we pole ourselves aground and then we get out and wade. But I noticed as I've fished in Texas a little bit, and it just seems like a lot of people will use a boat to get to a place to wade, that a lot of anglers there prefer the wading, and probably for a lot of the reasons where you're feeling the bottom. Are there any other reasons that someone would just prefer? Is it a confidence thing, or you know what I'm talking about? I saw a lot of guys, get out, put the power pole down, and then they get out and start wading.
So I think so, right? And I think you can be a little bit more efficient on the water weighting, especially with a larger group of anglers. Let's say it's you and three buddies, right? If you got a flat in front of you, you can spread out, right? And not be on top of each other and confined to, like, let's say a 21-foot bay boat, right? Or we're casting over each other. No, you can kind of spread out, right? And a person can target shallow, one person can target deep, and kind of the other two in the middle. And so what you can find is that as you progress through that flat, and waiting, varying distances from each other. But if one person's consistently getting bit, okay, maybe we need to all focus our efforts up shallow today, or out deep, or vice versa, right? And so that's where I think that efficiency comes into play. And there is so much wadeable water here. It's pretty much the entire Laguna Madre to some extent is pretty wadeable, right? And so, instead of being confined to a 21-foot or 23 cat or something like that, get out and wade those flats and put your heads together, trust each other's abilities and cover that water, be more efficient, and then target that bite and then stay on them.
Nice. All right, Chris, you got an awesome podcast. You got a great thing with a Speckled Truth. Tell people how they can find you and get more information and listen to your podcast.
Yeah, Speckled Truth Podcast. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Speckled Truth Podcast. It's really on all podcasting platforms. And then you can also find us on our 2 social media platforms. We're not on everyone, but really Instagram and Facebook. Those are our 2 kind of bread and butters. It's kind of where we generate and produce and publish content. And that's really all I have time for. So that's all, Tom. I really appreciate it. And thanks so much, sir.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for helping so many anglers. If you want to learn more about trout fishing, definitely check out the Speckled Truth, not the Special Truth, the Speckled Truth. You'll learn some special truths there about catching these giant fish. And Chris, man, you have your program. Explain the Dirty 30 program and what someone would have to do to get into that, because I think that's cool.
Absolutely. It really is. We've changed a little bit about it. I think since I've been on your podcast a couple years ago, but the Dirty 30 program is really for fish over 30 inches, right? So anybody that fishes where speckled trout or spotted sea trout are available, and various estuaries, if you catch a 30-inch fish or above, take a picture of that fish on a measuring device and then submit it through our website, thespeckledtruth.com. We have a citations article on there. There's a link in there. You'll have to submit that kind of supporting documentation. And the intent there is we actually submit and provide you a certificate, a Dirty 30 citation certificate with a sticker, as well as a state sticker of where you caught it, right? So if you're in the state of Florida and you register a Dirty 30, we're going to send you a certificate signed by all the guys at Speckled Truth. And then it also has your name and in the length of the trout and kind of where it was caught, general area. And then, we'll send you that Dirty 30 sticker. And what we always say is that you can't buy it, you got to earn it. Right. And so that's the biggest thing. And what we do with the data, and the reason we're asking for folks to submit those, is we study these fish, right? This is a labor of love for us. And we really try to understand about their habitat, right? We understand about their feeding habits. We understand how they relate to moon phase and all these different things, right? The intent there is this is a labor of love for us. And this is something we want to learn more about, these special fish. As my good friend said, Mike McBride, he said, these fish, these Dirty 30 fish, are really 0.5% of the speckled trout population. And so truly shows how special these fish are. And so the more we know about them, I feel, the more we can kind of link people and anglers to experience potentially the catch of a Dirty 30 and how thrilling that is. And as a result of that, they'll hopefully one day want to take care of it.
Nice. All right. That's it. Go check out the Speckled Truth. And Chris Bush, thank you very much for all your help today. And hope you all are better wade fishermen because of it. All right. We'll see you next week.